Welcome to the War Academy channel. If I ask you, who won the Battle of Prokhorovka, would you know how to give me a clear and concise answer? Was it the result of this battle that sentenced the Citadel operation? In this program, we are going to see in great detail how the fighting between the German armored elite and the elite of the Red Army in the vicinity of Prokhorovka took place and the result it had. And it is that in this battle the 5th Guards Tank Army intervened on the Soviet side, against the three most powerful divisions of the Waffen SS, these being the Leibstandarte, the Das Reich and the Totenkopf, which had been grouped to form the two SS Panzer Corps. But before we get to this, let's briefly get into context. It all started when on July 5th, the Germans launched Operation Citadel and their two pincers began to advance. They were soon met by stubborn Soviet resistance and their formidable defensive lines. Based on this, the Germans saw their offensive slow down very much and their rhythm was lowering more and more. Although in the North Pincer they had to stop in a few days, also due to attacks from their rear, the South Pincer, in which the 2nd SS Panzer Corps is framed, continued its advance. As we have just said, the Soviets had prepared their defense very well, with a total of 3 main lines, and another series of defensive lines further back that were also erected in case the Germans managed to penetrate their defenses. In any case, everything was arranged so that each of these first 3 lines was capable of stopping the Germans in their tracks. In addition to these garrisons, the Soviets had large armored formations that would be sent wherever the Germans attacked. Continuing now with the German offensive, they had managed little by little to overcome the different Soviet rings, and it was on July 10th when the first units of this 2 SS Panzer Corps began to overcome the 3rd Soviet defensive line, in the direction of to the city of Prokhorovka. This set off all the alarms in the Soviet High Command, as it was seen that despite their powerful defenses, the Germans continued to break through. The next action in the Soviet defensive approach was to send their armored reserves to carry out a powerful counterattack that would stop these German formations in their tracks. This is how on July 12, 1943, one of the fiercest battles of World War II was unleashed. In the early hours of July 12, this was the situation and location of the 2 SS Panzer Corps. On the left flank, we find the Totenkopf division on the banks of the Sl River. In the center we have the Leibstandarte, just above the railway lines that started from Prokhorovka to the south, and finally the Das Reich division that was located on the right flank, somewhat further south than the Leibstandarte. It is estimated that between the 3 divisions they had just over 200 tanks of all kinds, the most numerous being the long-barreled Panzers III and IV, and only 7 Tiger-type tanks are included. One of them, right in the center with the Leibstandarte division, was commanded by Michael Wittmann, whose unit of 4 Tigers would go on to destroy up to 60 Soviet armor throughout the battle. On the other hand, the Soviet forces are estimated at about 650 or 700 main battle tanks of all types, mainly T-34. At this point, it is striking that the reports that the Soviets had indicated that between the 3 German divisions they had a total of 110 Tigers, when the reality, as we have said before, is that on that day they only had 7 operatives. That figure is also not even remotely close to the total number of divisions of the Southern Pincer at the time they attacked, since their initial number was 58. In any case, this was the figure handled by the Soviet commanders, which was possibly motivated by the unexpected advance that the Germans had made. This information is important due to the order received by the Soviet tank commanders, because given the danger represented by those supposed 110 Tigers, they were ordered to charge at full speed on the German armored vehicles, to close the distance between them as soon as possible. This is because the Tiger can shoot down a T-34 at a range of about 1,800 meters, while the T-34 has to get as close as 800 meters or less to shoot down German armor. Being the minimum time possible in that kilometer of deadlock was vital for them. As we will see below, this would lead them to make some mistakes that were fatal. This Soviet counteroffensive was initially prepared to be launched during the late evening of the 11th, but was delayed throughout the night until the morning of the 12th. The first to charge was the 29th Tank Corps of the 5th Guards Armored Army. They attacked around 10 o'clock in the morning parallel to the railway line that came down from Prokhorovka. Suddenly they found a small German regiment belonging to the Leibstandarte division that was a little further ahead. These soldiers quickly released purple flares to warn rear troops that a Soviet armored attack was approaching. The German, having von Ribbentrop, who was the son of the foreign minister, was the closest to the area and had a unit of 7 IV panzers. Having no idea of the magnitude of the Soviet offensive, Ribbentrop approached the area intending to stop it, but was quickly outmatched and 4 of his armor were put out of action. This forced him to withdraw into the area where the main body of his division was with the remaining 3 Panzer IV, while he was pursued by some 130 enemy tanks. The speed with which the Soviets were launching was such that they did not notice an anti-tank ditch that they themselves had dug in the area for their defenses, and began to fall into it. This was partly the one that managed to momentarily stop the advance while the bulk of the Leibstandarte was activated. The Soviet armor had to head east towards the railway, as it was the only place they could cross. This caused a heavy traffic jam when the Soviet tanks headed for this junction, and they were a perfect target for the German guns that shot them down one after another without suffering any losses. Another tank brigade had been thrown a little further west, and managed to round this ditch on its left side and were able to engage directly with the German panzers. At the same time, the other 2 divisions of the 2 SS Panzer Corps also received heavy attacks, which were also unexpected. On the left flank, the Totenkopf division had to face 2 Soviet tank corps in the vicinity of the Sel River, and on the right, the Das Reich division faced 2 other armored corps just in the curve of the railway line. Because the Leibstandarte division was somewhat ahead of the other 2, it had to support Das Reich in the face of the danger that the Soviets would attack them on their left flank. Because the Leibstandarte division was somewhat ahead of the other 2, it had to support Das Reich in the face of the danger that the Soviets would attack them on their left flank. Finally, and after hard fighting, all the Soviet attacks were repulsed that July 12th, and almost 400 armored vehicles of the 5th Guards Tank Army had been killed. The total number of Soviet tanks completely lost would be about 225. German casualties are not specified, but they were not many in relation to the magnitude of this offensive. They are estimated at less than 100 armored vehicles, of which many could be recovered. To get a good idea, we have to look at the following. Welcome to the War Academy channel. Although by the morning of July 12th, the 3 divisions had more than 200 tanks of all kinds, by July 16th, when the offensive was cancelled, this 2 SS Panzer Corps had with 30 Tigers, 69 Panzer IV, 80 Panzer III, 4 Panzer II, and about 64 assault guns, according to Michael Whitman's book Ace of Tigers. In total they add up to 243. Many may wonder how it is possible that a few days after this battle the Germans had more armor than before, and the answer is very simple. This Battle of Prokhorovka occurred when the German units were badly worn out from overcoming the 3 Soviet defensive rings, and many of their tanks were in the repair shop. But little by little they began to rejoin again. It should be noted that at the time of the completion of the offensive on Kursk, due to the fact that their units had to be sent to other sectors such as the Donetsk Basin, these 3 divisions were marked as fit for any type of combat. This confrontation represented the high point of the Battle of Kursk, and served to convince Manstein that they had to continue attacking, since the numbers of destroyed Soviet armor were about 1,200 since the attack began, compared to about 200 irrecoverable losses. Germans. With the failure of this Soviet counteroffensive, everything made him indicate that they had finally finished with the defenses and reserves of the Red Army, and that from then on, nothing would stop them. However, and as we saw in another video about the reasons for the cancellation of this offensive, The southern pincer finally had to be paralyzed a few days later due to different Soviet attacks on the Ural salient and the Donetsk basin. I will leave this program in the description in case you want to see it. The books I have used for this program have been Cursed 1943 by Roman Topol and Michael Whitman's Zdita Grace, which I will also leave below. I sincerely hope that this program has clarified all the doubts you had about this great battle of armored cars, and I am waiting for your comments. That's all. Subscribe and give a like if you liked this video, and see you in the next one. See you soon.